It's great to have everybody here. This is our first panel discussion of the day in doing our children's panel. My name is Mark Perry. I'll be the moderator. With me we have Joanne Sheridan to my right, and then to my left is Tara Williams and Denise Flagg. Just going to take a few minutes to do an introduction of each author. Then they'll take a few minutes to talk about their books, and then after that we'll get into the topic, which is writing children's books for grown-ups, because unlike other genres of writing, when you're writing for children, you also have to keep the grown-up or the parent or the grandparent in mind, because most kids aren't running loose in a bookstore with a $20 bill in their hand, being able to select their own books. So the books have to appeal to the parent or the grandparent that's buying them. And then at the end, we'll take general questions, because I'm sure once we get going, you'll have more specific questions for each author and their works. So I will start with Joanne. J.M. Sheridan lives in New England with her husband Kevin and daughter Brianna. That must be Brianna. Yes, hi.
I'm just waiting.
And four very mischievous kitties: Peabody, a.k.a. P-Man, Shermanus, a.k.a. Shermy Wormy, Thistle, a.k.a. Big Mama, and Poppy, a.k.a. Psycho Kitty. She attended the Institute of Children's Literature in Connecticut, as well as numerous children's books writing workshops, events, seminars, and classes. She is currently a member of our association, the Association of Rhode Island Authors, and the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI. Dragonfly Magic and French Fries French Fries in the Park are the first books in the Brianna and Mrs. Moo series of books designed to educate and inspire our children, as well as support New England communities. And the next is Tara Williams. Tara began writing books when she became an early childhood educator. She realized books can be both for enjoyment and a great conversation starter with children. Many difficult topics can be addressed using a book. Tara lives in Rhode Island with her husband Chris and their daughter Aria. Tara wants all children to always hold their heads up high and keep smiling. And then lastly, down at the end, we have Denise Flagg. Denise's love of books and animals have merged together to create a children's book series that entertains as it educates. She serves on a volunteer committee for the Friends of the Providence Animal Care and Control Center, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to supporting the animals in the city of Providence. Denise is a member of the Association of Rhode Island Authors. She lives in southern New England with her husband Ernie and their sweet rescue dog Jax. A percentage of her book sales are donated to local animal shelters. And then my name is Mark Perry. I'm a freelance writer and founder and creator of the BBB accredited website, NorthPolePostman.com. I'm also the creator of my character, Postmark, the North Pole Postman, which is why you see me here with Santa's mailbag today. Postmark is the elf that works in Santa's mailroom. Postmark's school visit program has been a hit in schools throughout the country, with my first book, Postmark, Santa's Misfit Postman, and of course across the ocean state with my latest book, Postmark, the North Pole Postman Visits Rhode Island. Postmark has been the official postman in Adaville for the past 4 years, and I continually, I have traveled to all 50 states and set foot on all 7 continents, but currently I reside in the Elmhurst city of Providence, the creative capital of New England. So this first book is fairly autobiographical because it talks about my travels throughout the 7 continents. So that's our brief introduction. I'm going to start over here with Joanne, and she can say a few words about how she got started writing and a little bit about her books. We'll probably spend about 2 or 3 minutes with each author doing that, and then we'll talk more specifically about our topic of writing children's books for grown-ups.
Great. Thank you very much. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming by. So I'm J.M. Sheridan, and this is my daughter, Brianna, my muse, actually. She inspires me every single day. So we started out a couple of years ago. I wrote Dragonfly Magic, and it's actually based on a true story that happened in the yard with Brianna and I. But it really, it's about Brianna going on a search for magic, and she looks for it in all of the kinds of things. But ultimately, it's the magic inside of her that lights up the world around her. And it's really about not giving up on something you believe in, even if other people do not believe in it, and encouraging children to persevere. If they believe in something and you want it to be true, then it will be true. Last year we came out with French Fries in the Park. My daughter Brianna is high-functioning autism, and the little boy that we've actually featured in here, Tommy, is very low-functioning autistic. But he's my good friend Lori's little boy. And growing up with a child with autism, you learn that it's really not something that's talked about, disabilities, unless there is someone in the family with a disability. So this is for, I would say, the read-to age, as long as they're not eating it, up to like first or second grade. And it introduces autism to young children, and it shows them that, even though they are going to notice behavioral differences, there's a lot of similarities too. Children with autism love to do a lot of the same things any child does. So Brianna and I donate a percentage of every single sale to local charities. So we wrote Dragonfly Magic to help support A Wish Come True. And then French Fries in the Park was actually written to help support the Autism Project. They actually are endorsing the book, and it's at their place, and it's on their website, and so that's our story.
Thank you, Joanne. And I'm Mark Perry. I wrote this book. We're actually going into the 5th season with it now. It came out in 2013, postmark Santa's Misfit Postman. It's the story of, like I said, it's fairly autobiographical. It's the story of why Santa chose me to be the elf who works in his mailroom. And it kind of spins off on Rudolph and the Island of Misfit Toys, because I figured for a 4, 5, 6-year-old who's familiar with a reindeer with a red nose and an elf who wants to be a dentist, that the elf who works in the mailroom should be a misfit too, right? That just makes perfect sense. It's very logical. And it has a very important message about bullying, and a little bit about what we were talking about believing in yourself. It teaches kids that if somebody tells you you can't do something, to just believe in yourself. Mark believed in himself and was able to travel to all 7 continents and eventually work for Santa, which is like the coolest job in the world to have if you're a kid. So that's what that book does. But from there, I decided to go with more of the geography element of this first story and have Postmark go on other adventures. So instead of traveling through all 7 continents, he's traveling through the state of Rhode Island, starting in Woonsocket and working his way down to Westerly, collecting the letters, putting them in Santa's mailbag, and taking them to the North Pole. So along the way, he learns about Slater Mill, he learns about the Newport Mansions, the Bristol Parade, the Watch Hill Carousel, and everything in between. So it's a really fun way for kids to learn about all the great places that we have in such a small state. I mean, from Woonsocket to Westerly is only a 43-mile stretch of highway, but in a very, very small place, we have so many great things throughout the state. And tying in the letters to and from Santa is just a really fun component for kids of this age group to learn a little bit about Rhode Island history. So those are my 2 books, and then this year we just came out with 2 activity books to go with the stories, which is really awesome. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, and it's been a long time coming, so I'm really happy to have these as well, because now when I'm at schools doing my classroom presentations, we have workbook now. that goes with the storybook, and the activities do tie into the Common Core, which is great for school teachers. And we have a diagram or a little chart in the front of each workbook that tells you which CCS standard it ties into. So quite a bit of effort going into these, but it's great to have both. So we'll go to Tara next, and then Denise.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. So I also wrote 2 books. My first book is called Angel Friends, and it's about a little girl based on my niece who lost her dad when she was 2 years old, and she started seeing them and getting messages. But I made it into a kid-friendly version about a little girl who has an imaginary friend, but it's really an angel. So it has a lot of layers to it, so you can talk about grief with your child, or it could just be a fun book for them to listen to. I'm a teacher, so I made an audio CD to go with it with Listening Center and a little stuffed animal, and they sing the book to you for listening. And my second book is another Angel Friends book, but it's called Let Your Smile Shine, and it's an anti-bullying book. This one's based on my daughter. She was born with a cleft lip, and she has a little scar on her face, so I want to teach her about self-acceptance and bravery, and I want to teach others how to be kind and to accept differences in others. So that's why I wrote this book. And like I said, I'm a teacher, so it's also great for schools. And with this book, I made a teacher packet as well that has all the state standards in it. So if you come by my table and you're a teacher, you want a teacher packet, they're there for you to take as well. And my thing goes along with theirs too. I just want the kids to believe in themselves and just to be the best that they can be.
Denise?
Hi, so my books are back at my table. There's someone trying to get it right now for me. But I started a children's book series based on the daughter that I had. We had lost our daughter to lymphoma, and my husband and I were really sad about it, and I had always wanted to write a children's book, and I dabbled in poetry for many years, had a few poems published. And a couple of weeks after our daughter Chloe passed, my husband said, you love to write, why don't you write a story about a daughter named Chloe? And I was like, why didn't I think about that? So I was armed with pen and paper and just started to write about Chloe and his amazing personality. And wanted to teach kids a little bit about the winters in southern New England and how the animals survive in the cold weather here. So after I wrote the book, it was a great way for me to learn how to grieve. Thank you so much. So this is what it looks like. Klaus's first winter, and then the second one in the series is Christmas with Klaus. I want to do a spring version and then a summer version as well. But like I was saying, it really helped me with the grieving process of losing our daughter. We didn't have any children, so Klaus was our baby. So after I finished with it, tucked it away for a little bit, and I knew at some point I wanted to publish it and maybe team up with a nonprofit to help animals in need. And that's exactly what I did. I teamed up with Friends of the Providence Animal Care and Control Center, and it's a 501c nonprofit, and we raised money for the Providence Animal Shelter. I started volunteering with them as well, so 10% at the end of the year will go to help fund the enrichment programs. We will buy toys, help with any medical expenses, like surgeries. We will help with the grooming program. Most of my funds will actually help with the grooming program itself. We have a mobile groomer that will go there to groom the animals.
Thank you, everyone. We're actually doing very well on time. We've got about a half hour left, so we're going to take about 10 to 15 minutes to talk a little bit about writing the children's books for grown-ups, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end to answer questions. So I'm going to start with my first book. Just part of the reason for this was because one of the very first reviews that came out online about my very first book was actually a very negative review, but it was actually quite accurate, so I mean, I'm not criticizing the reviewer. there's a lot of things that kids can get out of my book, like I mentioned earlier, the message about bullying and the geography element of learning that kangaroos come from Australia and panda bears come from China. But the book, as the reviewer says, rests on a pun. My name postmark being like the postmark that goes on a stamp. Well, most 4 or 5 year olds don't know what that is. So she was correct in that, it rests on a pun that kids don't know about, but that wasn't the point of that. I was writing that because when the parents see that, they'll go, oh, that's really cute and clever. That was meant more to attract the adult buying the book. So I thought, well, she kind of missed the point on that. So that was one of the reasons I wanted to, talk with these other authors about what it is that they've done to try and make the books appealing both for grown-ups and for kids, because it is the grown-up, primarily women, who have the buying power for these books. And then in this book here, one of the things I also did it for myself, but I knew that parents would get such a kick out of this, because this is Rhode Island, and we're known for our clam cakes and chowder. Did you ever think you'd see the day where you'd see Santa Claus eating clam cakes and chowder? I mean, that's just super cute if you're a grown-up. Some kids, I'm sure, have eaten clam cakes and chowder, but not every 4 or 5 year old is going to pick up on that. But that wasn't the point. I did actually spell it correctly, but my editor, who was in, believe it or not, Texas, wasn't sure if clam cakes was 1 word or 2 words, so we were going back and forth on that issue for a while. I actually did put it in as 1 word, but it can be either word, because I actually Googled that. So those are just a couple of the elements in my books as to why they would appeal to grown-ups, and also just wanted to we'll start with Joanne and work our way down and talk a little bit about what it is that you think the parents would appreciate from your books, since they technically would be the ones buying them.
Of course, thank you. So in my family, giving back to your community is very important. And also bringing awareness on several levels is very important to us as well. When we wrote French Fries in the Park, as I said earlier, it was important to me to bring awareness to young children of disabilities like autism, because when they go to school, they're exposed to all different types of disabilities, from Down syndrome to all the multi-layers of autism spectrum disorders, and the children don't know how to interact. But it's also, I recognized, because Bree is now 14, and it's something that's difficult for the parents to discuss, especially if they don't have the knowledge themselves. So I do a lot of research with my books and make sure that the message that we're giving to the children is also information to the parents. And the fact that we do donate a percentage of every sale to the Autism Project and Wish Come True. We're working together on a 3rd book right now, and in this book, Brianna and Mrs. Moo learn all about service dogs. And why certain children need to have service dogs. So my book's not for everyone. I've had, actually, most times grandparents aren't keen on my books because it's a taboo subject. Autism is, or the fact that a child can have a service dog is a taboo subject to that generation. Hopefully not to our generation. I was approached or commissioned by some of the nurses at Hasbro Children's Hospital to write a story about childhood cancers, and specifically that re-enter back into the classroom after they've had treatment. That's a really difficult subject, and you have to. It appeals to the parents because it's a very strong subject, but you have to appeal to the child too. So there has to be elements of fun in there. Like in French Fries in the Park, in the end, Brianna does notice the differences with Tommy. No eye contact, nonverbal, sorry. Tommy's stimming is actually hand waving, and parallel play versus interactive play. So he never speaks to her once the entire day that they're playing, but she walks away thinking she made such an amazing friend, and in the end, she says to her dad, "Daddy, did you see? Tommy loves French fries just like me." So it has a lot of fun, whimsical, it rhymes. So that's the appealing to both the parent and the child. When I appeal to parents, I think of myself and things that I would be into, like the service dogs. There's service dogs everywhere. And I don't mean the emotional dogs, although they're very important. I know a lot of people who have them. I mean like the service dogs that a child who has seizures has. In our new book, At Your Service, that's what the child has. She has seizures, and the dog is trained to be able to pick up that scent. There is a company up in Massachusetts called Canines for Disabled Kids, and they have a scholarship program where they award scholarships to low-income families who need a service dog. I don't know if you know, but they're about $25,000 for one dog.
Wow.
Yeah. So the new book will actually go to help support their scholarship program, and to me, that's writing for children.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. All right. So, Tara?
So I just feel that it's my job as a mom and a teacher to instill morals in the little ones when they're still little. So I did write books for both adults and for children. My first book, like I said, is based on my niece, but it's also based on my sister, who didn't believe the messages that she was getting from her 2-year-old daughter until there was just too many coincidences, and she finally had to believe. So I think this is a great conversation starter, and I feel like it's really important for us as parents to have conversations with our children about the tough topics, and this book is one way to do it, so that's why I specifically wrote this one. I think both of my books have a lot of layers to it, so it can either just be a fun book, or it can be a serious book where you have serious conversations. So it's both of the books are however you choose to use them. I feel like when I read to my daughter every night, there's always a line that pops out at me from reading one of my books. I'm like, wow, that can apply to me too. So I try to make sure that I put those in the books as well. I mean, every night I read, and every night I'm like, wow, this is a great book. It's a lesson for me as well. And I can go to bed knowing that she got a lesson and I got a lesson at the same time. So I do think it's super important to write for the adults and for the children as well.
And I'm glad you, Tara actually also brought up a good point that I should have mentioned earlier, in that another thing that's really nice about children's books is they are conversation starters. I mean, I'm sure Joanne feels the same way about hers. And as I do about mine, is a children's book really should act as a bridge to a deeper conversation, because there's more behind the words and the pictures than just like the 400 words in the book. It's a chance to stop at a certain point and ask your child a question, or talk a little bit more about a kangaroo, or a child who has been made fun of in school, or what have you. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Okay, and Denise?
So my books are more on the entertaining aspect, and as far as the illustrations, I wanted it to appeal to both adult and child, and I searched out an illustrator who worked for Disney, so it has that little bit of that Disney-like feel, because I know I love Disney as well, so that's appealing to both. Also, in writing, I'll put some little catchphrases in there. Like, for instance, in Close's, in Christmas with Close, Denise and Ernie, who are two characters based on my husband and I, walk through the door with a Christmas tree as close as we can from his nap. And Ernie, the character, says, "Did we make you from your cat nap?" And now, obviously, a young child won't know what that means, but it gets some snickers out of the adults. But by the end of the book, the dog does learn what a cat nap is because he's a very curious dog. So a lot of my stuff teaches, but in an entertaining way. And in this particular book, they learn what the animals in the really do to survive in the winter. And which is quite entertaining to me is he learns about the frog and what he does in the winter to survive. And the frogs go very down into the pond on the muddy bottom and go dormant for the entire winter. And not many adults know that, so every time they get to that point, I hear them say, "I don't know that about frogs." So it's kind of writing for both adults and children in that aspect.
Actually, we wrapped that up pretty good. We've got just a little over 15 minutes, and I'm sure there's probably some of you out there that have more specific questions for each individual author. If there's any aspect of any of our books that you want to ask more about, or what inspired us to write them, or anything like that. If there are any questions pertaining to anything like that, we can do that now. Yes?
Can you guys speak to the art? You were talking about how you hired illustrators. Do any of you guys do your own art? How do you work with the artists?
Oh, okay. So the question was more in regards to our illustrators and the illustrations and the artwork, and where they and how do we do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can do it.
Do you want to start? Okay.
Because I did two different books, and one was traditionally published. So they found me the illustrator, and they did computer generated everything for me. And they actually had the last say on everything, so I wasn't too keen on that. So my second book, I self-published, and they gave me folders filled with different illustrators, and I got to choose who I liked. And actually, this author was she's a 14-year-old. This was her first illustrations that she did. She lives in Chariho, and I chose her to illustrate it for me, and we went through the process together. Obviously, she's younger, so we would meet like on a weekly basis. We would talk about what I liked, and she was awesome. So I chose her that way. So if anyone knows of any illustrators, you can give your work to Stillwater. That's who I went through, and then they forward it to the authors.
So with the self-publishing, the art, how it's set into the typeset, still learning with the way your text and the artwork together, that's all done with Stillwater.
Yes.
Yeah, so he was just asking more specifically about Stillwater, and if they set the text and the artwork, and and the answer to that is yes. Steve Porter, who's the president of our association and who has a table, I think right down by the stage in the front entrance, is actually the owner of Stillwater, and has published a number of books for many of the authors in the group. Did anybody else want to comment on their illustrators?
Well, I can. I actually like to support local people. So Cecilia, I met through a friend, and this book is for kids a little bit older, so girls maybe 7, 9, like right around there. And her illustrations are what I feel are much more mature. And then Jamie is actually a member of ARIA, who I actually love. And her style, this is for the grade 2 up to like first, maybe second grade. And her, it's more solid for kids, bright, primary colors. I had fun working with both of them. I'm an artist myself, so I would draw everything out I have my little paper book and everything's drawn out and my text, and I've decided that the new book that I'm working on, Brianna and I are going to illustrate that one.
So you're going to do your own illustrations. Great, that's impressive. I wish I could draw and do my own illustrations, but that is definitely not the case. My illustrator came a little in a different way from Joanne and Tara, in that I publish my own books, but I don't use a company like Stillwater or I'm trying to think of some of the other ones off the top of my head, but I can't. But I actually own my own publishing company, Della Francis Press, so I can also publish books for other authors as well. So I do everything in-house, from getting the graphic design to the illustrations to the printed. Mascot Publishing, that was the other company I was trying to think of, because I actually use the same printing press that they do. So what I did, initially I was seeking out a specific illustrator from Barrington, who's done some amazing work, but one was way too expensive, and two was like already booked out for the next 3 years. So when that fell through, I thought, well, RISD is right in our backyard, and there's a lot of talent there, so well, let me see what I can do. So I contacted the school, and they have a website called Artworks, and I posted an ad on Artworks, and I got probably 4 or 5 responses, but the first one came back from an artist named Leah Marcoux, and I was taken by her artwork right away. I just knew it was the perfect fit for this, and I liked some of the other portfolios that came in, and I went to various websites and everything, but I came back to her, and it was the best decision I ever made. She and I have been working together for 5 years, and she's great, and I mean, just the evolution of her artwork between the first and the second book is incredible, and I love working with her. She graduated from RISD in 2009 and had already had some experience illustrating for toy companies and greeting cards, but had never illustrated a book. So it was the right fit at the right time, because my background came from journalism and newspaper reporting, that I had never written a book before. So we each had a little bit of experience, but it was our first book, and it's been a great fit ever since. She's very professional, she's excellent at meeting deadlines, and she's a local artist. She lives in Cambridge now, but she graduated from RISD, and she's from North Providence, and I just love her. So, I'm sorry, you had a question, sir.
Are you seeing the same effect in growth in both?
It's hard for me to hear because of all the background noise. So say that again.
Boys and girls.
Boys and girls.
Both attractive to the seeing it.
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, he was asking the difference between boys and girls, and are boys and girls attracted to our books? And that's a great question, because there are certain children's books that are more fitting for girls than they are for boys. Like one book that I'm hoping to write someday would be more about trucks, because little boys love trucks because they're big and they go fast. I mean, I'm sure some girls would purchase that book too, but that is primarily a book for boys. But as far as my books go, because of the theme and the character being the elf who works in Santa's mailroom and collecting letters from kids all over the world, that attracts both boys and girls.
I have a funny story that I can share about that. So, as you can see, my 2 books, one is blue and one originally was orange, but then when the second print came out, it was more pink. So, and in it, it does look more for a girl, right? It has a princess. Brianna, she was probably like 5. She'll be 5 forever in my books. But, so I had stepped away from my table, and I saw a mom approach my table and was looking at both books. Now this one is definitely gender neutral. It has a boy and a girl inside the book, Tommy and Brianna. Again, the color scheming is very gender neutral. And the mother actually went to the next book, and she had 2 boys with her. They looked like twins, right around maybe 6 or 7. And I said, I made a comment about this being more about female, girls, for girls. And she got quite upset with me and put the book down and said, well, I was thinking of buying this for my sons. We have a gender-neutral house, and you just lost my sale. And she walked away, and I was like, I will never say this is for girls again. But it's true. People will look at it and say, oh, it has a princess in there, and there's no male character. So that's the element that's missing to make this more gender-neutral.
Yeah, that's also good that you brought that up, because in my Rhode Island book, when Postmark travels to all the cities and towns throughout Rhode Island, and he's learning about different things, I did make sure to put a boy and a girl in every page. So at Slater Mill, there's the water wheel, and it's Carlos and Holly. So there's a boy and a girl in each city talking about, whatever the landmark is in that city or town. Even at the Pawtucket Red Sox, I put a girl and a boy at Boy Stadium. So, because I thought that was important, and also racial diversity is apparent throughout as well. Does anybody else want to talk about this?
I think she has a question right here.
Okay.
Actually, I had a question, 2 questions for you. You do publish your own, you publish for other people?
I can publish for other people. I have not gone that route yet because I've been so busy doing my own work, but I am set up as a company like Mascot or Stillwater or these other places where if I found the right manuscript or the right manuscript came to me and I felt that there was a market for it, I could in fact do that. It just, I haven't had the time or the resources to, but I am equipped to do that.
So it's something you wouldn't normally do under normal, regular circumstances?
Correct. I mean, it's something that I'm hoping to eventually evolve into as more of my work grabs hold and those revenues come in from these works, then I would be able to invest that in another author's work. But I mean, if you had something that you wanted me to look at, I could certainly take a look.
And my next question, I had gone to a illustrators convention years ago, and they said that never does an illustrator also write for the book you're illustrating. And do you find a problem with that? I'm not sure why.
Okay. Yep. We're going to illustrate our next book. I have been in art school since I was 11 years old, so I can draw and paint very well. I thought it was the less complicated and less stressful route to actually not worry about illustrations and just focus on my story. But as I'm going along, I'm drawing out what I want the scene to look like, and then I paid somebody else to just color it. So we can color it. So, we'll see. I'll let you know how it goes.
Yeah, and I was just to kind of dovetail off of that. Going to say it really depends on the author. Like, she feels that she can do it. I don't have that talent, and because I've been a writer, for 20, 30 years now, I think in terms of words and not pictures. And when I was writing the first book, it was very challenging because the original manuscript was around 1,500 words, and I had to cut about 1,000 words out of it. And I was like, what words are they're my babies. They're so precious. How do I do that? But part of the reason I was having a tough time with that is because I didn't know what the illustrations were going to look like. So you had that
illustration first.
She had the illustration first. I didn't have it at all. I don't know what an illustration is going to look like. For the Rhode Island book, it was very easy. I know what Slater Mill looks like, and I know what the Tennis Hall of Fame looks like, and so that was a little easier. But in the original book, it was very difficult. But then as the illustrations were coming in, and I could see what story the watercolor was telling me, then I was able to more easily cut the words out. But initially, I did not have any ability to do that whatsoever. How much time? We have 5 minutes, so a couple more questions. Oh, what did they two do as far as illustrations?
So for my illustrations, I had a publisher who chose my illustrator for this one, and it was computer-generated graphic designs. And then this one is when I had the 14-year-old from Chara who illustrated this one. Oh, yes, absolutely. And I'm not an illustrator at all. So, but I do notice that a lot of people, they'll come to me and they say, "Oh, did you illustrate it and write it?" So that appeals to a lot of people. If you have the talent and can do that, I absolutely think it would be amazing to do that.
I agree.
So,
He's very successful.
I get that question a lot. Oh, did you do your own illustrations? Oh, do you do your own art? Well, who does your illustrations? And I tell my illustrator this all the time. You have no idea how many people ask about your artwork, probably more than they ask me about the writing of the story. So, I wish I could do both. Denise?
There are quite a few authors here today that illustrated their children's books.
One more question probably, and then we might be out of time, but go ahead.
So, it might not be an easy answer, but so if you have a book, I've had a book for a couple of years drafted, and I never went from point A to going to that point B and getting covered.
It's a tough plunge to take, yes.
Exactly, and so it haunts you every day, and it's there, and it's like, okay, so I was hoping to be inspired today. Thank you, I have been by all of you guys.
Great.
But what do you think would be that next step, or that first step to take that plunge?
Yeah,
And I can come and talk.
Yeah, talk to a number of us here as you're wandering out throughout the day, but particularly Steve and Dawn, who run Stillwater and have now published probably a couple hundred titles at least. That would be my recommendation.
There
and then
are
also
other
make sure
people
you get
too
edited.
around here that I know Dana Gambardella has her own publishing, like you do, who started taking some. So just talk to people, and you'll see that there's Steve and Dawn are the best, and they're awesome to work with. But there's others as well, and I would just get talking with them, and then connect with someone, find a friend. Like I know we're all willing to help, just we can email and ask any questions that you have. So. Thank you.
Yeah, and along that line, I do have some business cards. I'll put those out at the end of the presentation because I think we do have to wrap up. And we've got another group coming in. I believe the three of you all have tables. Yes, so if you're interested in any of their books, go and find them. I do not have a table because in about a half hour I have to leave to go to Edaville. But I know there were a couple of you that approached me and wanted to purchase my books, so if you are interested, just come and see me. I can stay for like 5 or 10 minutes afterwards if anybody wants a signed copy of any of my books. All right, well, thank you very much, and if you have any other questions, just come and see us.
Thank you.